phone's going off.
You good?
Tell me I'm live.
You're live.
All right, guys, welcome. We're this is the first time we're doing this with a lot of these different pages, guys. So we're really excited about it. Give us just 1 second here as we check our cameras, check our audio, make sure everything is set. I'm sitting here at a table. You guys are watching this. I'm Nate Zelinsky, and literally we have a giant production studio right behind you. So we've got two producers here tonight behind us, so we're just making sure everything is good. I'm getting a thumbs up. We're good. All right, guys. Again, I am Nate Zelinsky. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going live from a massive audience of a little over 3 million people if everybody stays tuned tonight. So huge thanks to that. Guys, this entire broadcast is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops. So huge thanks to Bass Pro for allowing us to go live on their page and from their platform. Huge thanks to Bass Pro Shops at Denver, Mr. Heater, and everybody at Tightline Outdoors. We're broadcasting live from the western states of Colorado. And depending on where you're watching this, where you're listening from or watching, you're probably in that transition as an angler. You are either on ice as a winter angler, or you're in that combination of open water going to ice, or you are full-blown open water and will never see ice. With that being a broad audience, we kind of want to talk about different things. The whole concept of this show and what you're watching. Again, this is all live. I'm Nate Zelinsky. It's all about education. Our goal is to make you a better angler. That's it. The moral of the story, again, is to hopefully educate people, bring in all the situations that we've ever encountered and dealt with, to hopefully, again, just make you a better angler and make you more successful every time you're on the water, whether that's catching more fish, catching bigger fish, or the combination of the two. And guys, this, again, is 100% about you, the angler and the visitor. So comment here. Again, share this with your friends. Tag your buddies. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, things like that, comment here below. We're going to answer those questions for you to make you more successful. So again, keep that in mind, and again, it's all about you. So comment your questions, and we'll definitely get them answered. The concept that we're going to talk about here for the first couple minutes, and then I'm going to be joined by a great friend and an amazing angler, Mr. Gary Parsons. We'll be joining Gary Parsons here in about 15 minutes. But the topic for the night, what we wanted to talk about as we're in this time of year where everything kind of is in that wishy-washy state between open water, ice, and the combination of the two, we want to talk about cold water fishing. We've dealt with so many questions. You know, I'd say the bass fishing is probably the number one question we've really dealt with this week, where questions are coming from all over the country about bass fishing. And everybody says, hey, you know, I'm on a pattern on my summer fish. I'm catching fish. I'm on the right shorelines. Water cools off and my fish disappear. And everybody's asking why those fish disappear. Hey, I know they're dropping off to deeper water. I know they're changing areas. But really, what's the concept of why these fish are moving? And really, food source dictates everything. I think so many times as an angler, if you look at a great angler and maybe an angler that's not quite there, the biggest difference I would say in the angling world is understanding that food source. If you talk to some of the best pros in the world, the knowledge of the food is really what brings that angler to that point of excellence. And again, people are listening to this and are like, man, what are you talking about? But I ask you, right now, you the listener, I know you guys are sitting there watching this, do you know what your fish are eating? I know we're jumping right into this, guys, with short introductions, but it's important. Do you, the angler, do you know what your fish are eating? If you're a largemouth fisherman, what are your fish eating in the reservoir or the pond or the lake or the river that you're fishing in right now? Do you know that food source? If you're a trout fisherman, like the big browns are running all the bays in the Great Lakes right now, what are those fish feeding on? If you're an angler up in Canada fishing for pike, what are those fish feeding on? Knowing the food is really knowing the fish. I'm getting ready to lead to the St. Paul Ice Show, and the topic of all my seminars is about food source. You, the angler, have to know that food source. So we bring it back to back. Everybody's like, man, I've been catching bass, just doing great this whole fall, and now I lost them. Now it's changed. Why has it changed? Why is my excellence? Why is my daily angling going downhill? And the main reason is a lot of times these bass are going to switch food source. For everybody here in the Rocky Mountain region, it's a switch between a crawdad forage and a minnow forage. So basically our smallmouth and largemouth are feeding on crawdads up until the water, say surface temperature hits about 52 to 53 degrees. At 52 to 53 degrees is when our bass slide off of the shoreline structure. It's when the crawdads start spending more time in the mud, more time under rocks. They start spending just more time buried up than they do out. And our bass immediately roll over to the alternative food source, which is a gizzard shad. So our bass go from 4 to 12 feet of water feeding on crawdads, and they drop down to 20 to 30 feet of water feeding on shad. It's the opportunity of more food and easier digestible food when that water gets into that colder temperature. So it's a thought process there. Now, again, one of the big miscommunications is everybody thinks crawdads, basically hibernate for the winter. They definitely do not. Even on an ice-capped lake, crawdads are still out and about. They still spend time roaming and feeding, but they also spend time in the mud, and they spend a lot of time, basically hanging out. So it's more that opportunity. When the water's warm, the crawdads are out most of the time, as opposed to whenever that water really cools off, they spend a little bit more time in the warmth of that mud, therefore not being as available to the fish, so the fish find that alternative food source. No matter what situation you're dealing with, no matter which situation you're encountering, knowing the food is going to dictate where the fish are at. And that's one of the biggest problems with cold water. So the second you start dealing with cold water, and again, you could have cold water of 37 degrees somewhere in the colder states. You could have cold water at 60 degrees in some of the warmer states. Really, definition of cold water is going to be the region in which you're fishing. But anytime that you have colder water, more than likely your food source is going to change up a little bit. So you, the angler, have to adapt with that food source. And the other big thing that changes is everything tends to group up. Your food is going to group up. Your feeding fish or your predator fish are going to group up. And the second you get these fish grouping together, all of a sudden you eliminate a lot of water. Now, unfortunately for some anglers, a lot of anglers lose the fish when they group like this and they struggle to find them. The anglers that are using their electronics, knowing the food source, know the fish, are going to be able to adapt to this change up per se, and they're going to find those fish. And the nice thing is when you find those fish, they're going to be grouped up, and you should be able to really excel as these fish are really grouped up in bigger numbers. So again, that's the topic for the night. I know we jumped right in there again. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nate Zelinsky. Again, huge thanks to Bass Pro Shops for providing this entire broadcast. Everybody listening from Mr. Heater as you're just joining us. We are talking about fall fishing in those colder water temps. And again, guys, we have a producer right here behind us. I got a couple iPads in front of me. You have questions, send them in. We would love to answer your questions and talk about your situations. Here in about 10 minutes, we're going to be joined by our great guest, Gary Parsons. But why we're talking about this, again, the concept is the fall transitions. And no matter what situation you're dealing with, is knowing the food, knowing the predator fish, and knowing that migration of where all these fish are going to gather together. And that can be a huge step for anglers to overcome. How many of you out there right now that are watching this are struggling in the fall? A lot of you probably are. And are you struggling to catch fish, or are you struggling to find fish? And I think a lot of anglers might not know the difference between the two. There's a lot of people that go out and just struggle and they say, hey, we're not catching fish, it's bad. But the true question is, are you on top of fish and you're on actively feeding fish and the fish of your choice? Or is it a situation of you're not even on fish and you're not catching fish because they're not there? So number one, especially in the fall, especially in the colder water temperatures, you have to make sure that number one, you're on fish, or make sure you're on actively feeding fish. So how do we know if a fish is active? We know that these fish are in a feeding area in which you know the predator fish, or that you know the prey fish, so you know the food source, and you know that the fish are around that food source and or the funnel points and how they're going to feed. And that's going to give you a great definition of, yes, I'm on actively feeding fish. I'm on active fish that are willing to take a bait, and I can catch those fish, as opposed to a fish where there's no food around, a fish that your funnel points up high and these fish are digesting down deeper. So again, knowing that you're on active fish is absolutely huge. And the other fact of, again, just making sure that you're on those fish. It's a big difference of trusting your electronics, whether you're on shore and you're just guessing where these fish are, or you're on a boat and you're using electronics. Knowing where the fish are, know they're actively feeding, again, just knowing you're on those fish is going to be a huge definition, a huge leap to starting to catch those fish. Now, once you find these fish, fall fishing, again, I don't care, you're talking largemouth, you're talking a variety of different species, no matter where you're at, what fish you're targeting. Once you find these fish, it's just time to catch these fish. And generally speaking, you're going to have a couple of different options when it's time to catch these fall fish. You have the option of, generally speaking, slow and steady. We call this spoon feeding the fish, where literally you, the angler, are politely asking these fish to take the bait. Then you have reaction fishing, where you're trying to force these fish to take the bait. They are drastically different, but they both work in a fall fishing situation. So when you're talking about fall fishing, again, no matter where you're at, colder water temperatures, on the ice, open water, you find the active fish. It's important to find those fish like we're talking about. Know the food source. But once you find these fish, again, the two options, spoon feeding or reaction. How we do that. We literally take a rod. Let's say I got an ice rod right here and I'm ice fishing for them. When I'm spoon feeding these fish, everything is on a slower pace. What I want to pretend is I'm the angler looking at you saying, please take the bait. I'm polite, I'm nice, I'm gentle, I'm almost begging. Hey, can you please take this? You know, I just need you to take this food. It's like you're talking to a young child and you're just begging them to do something. That's that spoon feeding, to where you, the angler, are making it extremely easy on the fish. You know, you're taking a small presentation, small plastics, and you're just drop it in front of those fish, and you know your movement is literally this fast. You're just, please, it's right in your face. I'm only making the fish move an inch to open their mouth to take this bait. And that's spoon feeding the fish. And a lot of times in a fall presentation, that's going to be key to catching fish. Then on the other side of the aspect, when you're making these fish react, this is when you're going to be extremely aggressive. You're loud. You're making a lot of vibration, noise, flash. The concept there is to where the fish don't think, you make them react. It's the same type of thing. If I took a baseball and I threw it at anybody out there watching, very few of you are going to sit there and allow that baseball to hit you in the face. Everybody reacts and they raise their hand up to catch that ball before it hits them. Everybody has reaction. You're in your car and somebody slams on their brakes ahead of you. You don't just slowly roll into them, or hope not. You hit the brakes and you react to that situation. Fish are the exact same. If you have a presentation that has enough flash, enough vibration, to where you literally drop this presentation right on top of those fish, you do the correct movement, the correct vibration, flash, and those fish don't think, they react out of their natural environment. They do what they think is correct. Again, they slam on the brakes, they open their mouth, and they take the bait because it's reaction. And reaction fishing in the fall is a great way to, again, catch more and bigger fish as you come along with these presentations. A fantastic fall style bait is something like a blade bait. Bass Pro Shops actually makes a laser blade, which is probably hands down the best blade bait ever made. A lot of guys hear these blade bait type things that start off as an ice bait for walleyes, but literally every fish in the country will feed on a blade bait. I mean, big bass of all species. I mean, whether you're fishing your spotted bass, or smallmouth, largemouth, stripers, you know, all the bigger predators, your muskie, all that type fish eats it, big stripers, and obviously trout, walleye, and all those type fish eat it as well. So it matches that minnow style forage, but it has a lot of flash, a lot of vibration, and anytime you kind of put all those together, you roll right into that concept of a reactionary fishing. The other big aspect of a reactionary style bite is anytime that you have a lot of forage in the water. So if you are in a situation where I know so many of us are, where you have a lot of bait fish, when you have a lot of natural forage in the lake, reactionary style fishing is absolutely going to be huge. Now guys, you can see right there, we got Devin. You just pulled a different cam. We got Devin behind us and Will here running the computers for us. Again, we got quite the operation. If you have questions, make sure you comment them in here. These guys will read them out loud to us. We can answer your individual questions and hopefully help you guys catch more fish. So again, you guys got questions about fall fishing? Send them in right now. I'll answer them right now before we go on the phone with Gary Parsons. Again, legendary angler Gary is coming on just in a couple minutes. And while you're waiting for that, again, I'm Nate Zelinsky. So again, thank you so much for joining us as you're just coming on. Again, we're talking concepts of that fall fishing. So who out there is struggling with fall fishing? Who has mastered the art of finding the fish, building those patterns on those individual fish, and therefore catching those fish? Once you build that concept of finding, locating, and then building that spoon feeding versus the reactionary style fishing, it's going to increase your daily catch dramatically, and you guys will start to see better results every time you're out there on the water. So guys, keep that in mind. That is going to help you, again, catch more fish. Knowing the food source, spending more time to make sure you're on active fish, knowing that relationship between predator and prey, and those small things right there are going to lead to catching more and bigger fish at the end of the day. Now, guys, here in about 30 seconds, we're going to jump over to Gary Parsons. So again, for anybody out there that's going to be watching this here in the next couple minutes, again, it's Gary Parsons from the Next Bite TV show, as well as if you've ever followed any sort of walleye tournaments across the country, you probably definitely know Gary through watching all those tournaments there. Guys, we actually have a couple different ways to pull Gary up. We're going to pull Gary up on this computer, talk to him that way, and if our audio's bad there, we'll try a different way, but depending on where Gary's at in the country right now, we got a couple different ways to connect to him, as we do every week on this show. We'll be connecting with a live tournament pro and or extreme angler per se from across the country to answer your questions right here. So again, who's got questions? Make sure you send them in. We got Gary coming up next. Got any questions back there, guys? They're all going through a lot of different feeds looking at questions and comments.
We've got a question from Chase Johnson out of Wyoming. It's almost December and water temps are still in the mid-40s. What would you do to target walleye?
So we got a question talking about Wyoming waters, open water walleyes. The temperatures are in the mid-40s, looking for walleyes. Generally speaking, with that, before we kind of go on the phones here with Gary, same type thing, reactionary fishing. Fall walleyes, they're always going to be sitting on structure, generally speaking, in the fall, near wherever that food source is coming from, whether it's a gizzard shad bite or spot tail shiners or perch. You're probably dealing with gizzard shad, probably being in Wyoming. So I would look for drop-offs. I'd look for breaks. Anywhere where you have shallow water dropping to deep water. I'd say the shallow side of that water can be as shallow as 12, 14 feet and as deep as 25 feet with deep water close to it dropping off. And those walleyes are going to be sitting right on those edges. Vertical jigging or casting, things like blade baits, jigging wraps, minnow-style baits will probably be the ideal way to try to catch those fish on those breaks. But again, making sure you're using electronics, make sure you see those fish on those break lines. If you don't see them, drive around until you find those fish, and you literally are hunting or targeting individual fish to make sure that you have that pattern built to target those fish. So again, find the fish first, understand that relationship, and then reactionary fishing for sure in the walleye type world is where my go-to pattern would be for that. So definitely give that a try. We appreciate the questions. All right, guys, we're going to go to the phones right now. We're going to give Mr. Gary Parsons a call, so hopefully you guys can all see this right here. We can zoom in if we have to. We're going to be giving Mr. Gary Parsons a call here, and we're going to be having a conversation with him. How you doing, Gary?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We appreciate you calling. We had a little bit of a computer meltdown about 15 minutes ago, so we had to change out our entire program, but you are live here on camera. We appreciate you calling in.
It's good to be here.
Absolutely. You've been in the television world as long as anybody I know, and I know you've had those meltdowns before as well.
Oh yeah. Every once in a while, whenever you think it's going to work out right, then boom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Gary. So we started this concept. Obviously, the whole concept of this show is to be for the anglers. We're trying to make everybody a better angler. We want them to catch more fish every time they go out, whether that's more numbers of fish, catching bigger fish, or understanding the system that they're fishing so they don't have the daily struggles that so many of us do from time to time. We started off talking about learning the food source, predator-prey relationship as you go into fall. Obviously, bait's tightening up, fish are gathering up, so obviously you're going to find less fish in more water, but more fish in smaller bodies of water. You as a tournament angler, you as a guy that you name the TV show, The Next Bite. You're always on the hottest bites, the trending bites, and probably the best angler in the world for being on the new concept of new techniques. As you go forth in the fall, in a fall-type fishery, Gary, what are your thoughts on that cold water fishing as you go into transition into winter? You know, some of our anglers are already on ice. Some anglers are between open water and ice, and we have a lot of people watching this feed from Texas, Mississippi, Georgia that will have fall and winter patterns but never see ice.
Right.
How do you go into these fall-type patterns as an angler for a variety of species?
Well, you know, the thing about it is, the one thing that I've learned, especially about walleyes, is that they're never exactly where you would expect them to be. I mean, there's some general trends, right?
Yep.
One of the general trends going into the fall is that after the lakes turn over, where the temperatures, flip-flop, the fish can go deep. They're not limited by that thermocline on some of the bigger bodies of water. And you know, that's a lot of technical jargon to just tell you that, hey, in summer they can only go so deep normally. On some bodies they can go real deep, but in the fall, and a lot of natural lakes in particular, they head down to deeper spots. Also, you know, a general trend is sharp drop-offs.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the walleyes never read the same books that we did. And you could find fish in those locations, but like in almost every other lake and any time of year, there's going to be fish shallow also. There's going to be fish in the weeds also. There's going to be fish on the weed edges also. And the one thing that I learned is through the years is that you can have general trends, but the reality is you need to rely on your electronics.
Absolutely.
In today's world of electronics, Nate, as you well know, unless the fish are under 3 or 4 feet of water, they really can't get away from you. They just can't.
Not in today's world.
I mean, everybody in the past talked about fishing, you know, structure edges and where rocks go to sand and transitions and stuff, and those things all hold true. But the reality is you can see those fish on electronics. You don't only have to see the bottom, hardness content, and all those things. You can see fish. And so whenever you drive around and mark fish, you just need to check it out. It really is that simple as far as I'm concerned. And it's no different really for the beginning of ice fishing.
Yep.
You can look at general trends. A lot of times those fish go from super deep water that they might inhabit in the fall. They'll start coming up a little bit shallower.
Yeah, once they get ice and kind of calms things down a little bit.
Yeah, but the reality is you really need to check out every depth. And you need to, you know, spend some time at it, even in the ice game. There's some flowages. I just did an article up here in Wisconsin where we've got flowages that have tannic water.
Okay.
And we find a lot of the winter walleyes in 2 and 3 feet of water. Where you really can't even dig for them. You have to put out like hot boxes or tip ups.
Yep.
And because they're so shallow that just walking over that shallow area will spook them. And they're there in huge numbers. And a lot of people would have never ever guessed that. But I've got friends that have won the fisheries in this area year after year after year after year, and that's the type of pattern that they use. And it's just because they checked it out. You know,
yep.
There was no preconceived idea of where those fish should have been. They checked them out and got some bites, and there you go. They put together
build a pattern. You know, I had a radio show this week where we did nothing but that. We talked all concepts of shallow water fishing, and number one, how a lot of times that's going to be your most aggressive bite, but number two, a lot of times that's going to be the biggest fish in the system. Again, you might not catch the most fish, but the hardest, you know, feeding fish, and the biggest fish are oftentimes shallow. And you know, what is it? 70% of the anglers probably miss that. Everybody wants the comfort of going deeper, and even though it's comfortable, the shallow water fish a lot of times are going to offer a bite that you normally would miss, and it's a great bite for anglers to try for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you hear stories about it all the time. Bass guys are running into, you know, they get 2-3 big walleyes while they're fishing bass.
Yep.
And that happens in almost every body of water that you fish where the species are intermixed. You know, I think you're 100% right. Shallow water can hold some of the biggest fish, certainly in the open water season, the most aggressive fish.
Definitely.
So can super deep water.
Yep.
Water I'm talking about that's 35 feet and deeper. If you catch walleyes there, in a lot of cases, you'll find some really big fish.
Yep.
Because they're feeding on a pelagic forage. They're living in a different world than the rest of the fish. They're feeding on the same things that lake trout feed on and stuff like that. So, you know, the in-between depths, the depths that are most popular, you know, anywhere from 5 to 30 feet. There's a lot of walleyes in those depths, but it's a little bit tougher sometimes to get the big. Yeah.
Definitely. Shallow and deep, split the difference. Now, guys, you are listening to, again, legendary Gary Parsons, one of the members of the Next Bite TV show, member of Ice Team. I mean, Gary, literally, you've been there and done it all. We've all watched you. You're a hero to so many of us. So I want to tell everybody that's listening, if you have questions for Gary Parsons, it's not that often that you get him literally on the computer screen right now to where you can type in a question and have Gary Parsons himself answer your question. So, guys, comment your questions. Devin will read them here, and we'll have Gary answer your questions if you have them. So make sure you comment that. Now, while we got a couple questions coming in here, I got a whole pile of them here that people want to ask. I have to ask you the same thing you ask everybody, or that you answer for everybody. where's the next bite right now? As we go forth into winter, you guys do a lot of ice fishing. What's the hottest bites that you're looking at in this next month? Where are you going to be on some great fishing?
Well, Monday I was going to go to Red Lake, but
Okay.
with the weather turning warm and
Get a little warm.
This weekend where we lost a couple of anglers there, I'm going to put it off a week. It's supposed to get cold again next week and then tighten up. So that Red Lake bite in northern Minnesota is always a really good early season bite.
You talking walleyes on red?
Yeah, for walleyes.
Perfect.
And, if you're going to ice fish walleyes, this early ice is a good time to do it. Just make sure that you take your safety precautions.
Absolutely.
But Lake Ogivik, normally in the upper peninsula of Michigan, is a really good early bite. Devil's Lake, I'm talking about bodies of water that a lot of people know about.
Yep.
But they're notorious for early season bites. So from an ice standpoint, those are the types of bodies of water that I'm going to look at. There's also some tremendous fishing all the way into December on Lake Erie yet. And there's a lot of guys that will quit fishing in the end of October. But for the hardcores that fish Erie a lot, they catch a tremendous number of fish all the way through November and December. And in some cases, January, if we don't get a freeze. When they catch them trolling crankbaits, just like they would in the summer, they just slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's another premium destination.
For some giant fish.
For some giant fish. Another place, there's a reservoir up just north by Regina in Saskatchewan. What is the name of it? It's Keith did a Shiver Minnow open water show on it. It's a pretty big reservoir. It just escapes my mind right now. But they get a lot of big early ice.
Okay.
Walleyes there too. And I'm talking 10 to I don't know, all the way up to 16, 17 pound fish.
10 to 16 pound walleyes, guys. Those are big.
If you're all looking for another potential trip where you could catch the trophy of a lifetime, Lake Tobin in Saskatchewan is a tremendous body of water, especially early ice. But early ice is probably right now there.
Yeah.
I would guess that they have good ice. Because I used to deer hunt up in those areas, and it would be early November. We'd have 20 below zero weather. So basically, Bay of Quinte.
Yep.
That's open water fishery this time of year. Guys will fish that all the way up until it freezes, which is a lot of times in mid-December towards late part of December, and then early ice there. There are some giant walleyes to be had too.
Definitely.
Those are all places that I've fished, and that some of my friends fish every single year because they know the timing is right and they get fish there all the time.
Yep.
Those are the next bites for walleyes. I love to crappie fish in the winter too. I crappie fish more than anything. And almost any lake is going to be good, from early ice. Normally the fish aren't suspended as much then. They're more towards the bottom in the transition areas where the hard breaks go into mud bottoms. That's a great place to look for them. But then in the winter, as the winter rolls on, those fish stay pretty aggressive, but they'll suspend, and you can
start
really
spreading out a little more.
Yeah. So jigs and plastics, they're just fun to play with.
Yeah.
They really are.
There's no doubt. The last time I fished Upper Red was I hit that glory season of 2002, 2003 on Red when the crappie were every one of them was 2 pounds, and it was I'll never forget that. I've been back many times since for walleyes and everything else, but I'll never forget Red with those 2 pound crappies. It just shocked me. I've never seen I've only seen 1 or 2 pound crappies in my life, and then majority of the fish you catch were that. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was at one time that fishery was unbelievable. The crappies are coming back there now. Who knows? Next 2 years it might be like that again.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Gary, we're going to take some questions here real quick. Again, we're going to pick your brain. Guys, again, you are talking to myself, Nate Zelinsky, and legendary Gary Parsons here on our live feed tonight. So, again, send your comments in. We're going to have Gary on for a couple more minutes, but we're going to go right now. Devin, what's our questions?
We got a few questions specifically for Gary. Gary, what is your go-to lure and what color for walleye ice fishing?
Walleye ice fishing. If you could only pick one bait, what is your go-to bait and color for walleyes in the winter through the ice?
I'd have to say a gold sidewinder.
A gold sidewinder.
I mean, it's a bait that very few people know about in terms of, you know, it being a really, really good ice fishing lure. But it's been around, and it's been around for a long, long time. But I've traveled in these ice circles. Not many people use that spoon, but it is absolutely deadly. So overall, you know, I catch a lot of fish on shiver minnows and other things too. But if I was going to pick the number one bait that would go on my line for walleyes, it would be a gold sidewinder.
A gold sidewinder. All right, so you heard it. Number one bait through the ice, literally from the guy who wrote all the books, literally. Gary Parsons, the gold sidewinder is the number one bait through the winter. All right, what's our next question, Devin?
Let's see.
Scrolling through them. We got 3 Facebook pages all loading up with questions for you, Gary.
All right, when you're targeting a new body of water through the ice, what do you look for on a topo map to determine where you fish?
So new body of water through the ice, looking at a topographical map. You don't have your electronics to cruise around. What is your main things you're looking for? I mean, obviously we're looking for breaks, sharp breaks, but what's the number one thing that you're looking for on a topo map targeting new water?
I think that a lot of that has to do with the type of body of water I'm looking at, whether it's a natural lake or a reservoir or basically a flowage, those types of situations. Natural lakes, I'm always going to look for the deep drop-offs, just like in the fall, anywhere close to weed edge.
Okay.
That's where I'll start. I'll start on the weed edge, maybe even put a tip up or so, or a hot box in the weeds, and then I'll start moving out. A lot of lakes, the back bays where there's weed growth is very, very good for walleyes early in the year, early ice. So on a natural lake, that's what I'm looking for. On a reservoir, I have learned through School of Hard Knocks that you catch a lot of walleyes on the channel edges, where the deep channel goes through the reservoir. But the flats, especially in any area where the channel edge, where the reservoir narrows down, and that goes for flow edges too. I'll take those flats that come off to the side and basically, work the flats. On big basin bodies of water, like you would see on, like, say, a Lake Winnebago in Wisconsin, those fish immediately, the good catchable fish are right out in the basin. And so you have to be very mobile and move around. So, again, it's a hard question to answer because each body of water seems to have general trends that work well for them. But those, I gave enough examples there that get you started.
And I think a lot of that comes, too, for people wondering that. I think a lot of it comes to food source. The first thing we talked about with this whole feed is knowing the food, because I think that's something that, somebody like yourself, you understand, obviously, wholeheartedly, and it really starts the whole question. And I always preach to somebody, if you want to take it to the next level, if you're an angler that's doing well and you want to come to that next step, knowing the food is really knowing the fish, because if you know where the food source is at, it eliminates 90% of the water you're fishing. If you know exactly what they're feeding on and where that food source is and where that reaction or that interaction between predator-prey happens, that really tells you exactly at least where the active fish are going to be. So again, if you want to take it to the next step, call your local DNR, talk to whoever's managing that lake. Talk to somebody of that knowledge that can tell you what that food source is, and that food source is going to take you to those steps and answer most of those questions for you.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I don't even know if you have to get really, intricately knowledgeable about that food source. If it's a basin lake and you know that they're feeding on redworms and mayfly larvae and then in the mud, that's good.
You're on, absolutely.
You basically just have to kind of look at what you're dealing with. The smell, obviously, you might want to go a little deeper than normal. So, you're right, Nate. The walleyes are gluttons. They're going to go where the food is and where the easy meals are. That's just where they are. That's
exactly it. All right, we're going to answer one more question, Gary, and then we'll let you go. I don't want to take up all your evening, but let's grab a couple more questions here.
What is your favorite open water lake to fish during ice season?
So what is your favorite open water fishery during ice season? So let's say you don't want to get on the ice, but you're fishing midwinter. So open water during a winter fishery. What's your number one thing there? River, reservoir? What's the options of those cold water fisheries?
I think if you're looking at open water in the middle of the winter, it's pretty hard to beat the Mississippi River system. Pool 4, for example, it's got a lot of different things going for it. The water clears up. It's usually a jig bite, and so for me, that would be the most favorite place to go. I used to go in January and February all the time on the river. I don't like to fight the ice as much now.
Yeah.
Build up on the boats and the motors and stuff, especially now that we have such nice, comfortable ice fishing shacks.
Yeah.
I normally don't do the open water thing in the winter now. I normally just go right out on the ice and fish.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a friend of ours, Joe Okada, the other day, and he's fishing Big Bay Denok right now, and he's excited because he's daytime fishing versus nighttime fishing. But he's in 6-footers. It's 10 degrees out, and I'm just like, man, that's rough. I know I'm getting a little soft in my old age, but that's rough conditions.
Well, he puts some tough nights, and then he fishes it right up until the end, until the bay freezes over too. He caught one the other day that was so big. I said, Joe, that fish makes you look skinny. Because he's skinny to begin with.
Absolutely, guys. Make sure you follow that Joe Okada. Go check out his photos right now. Again, he's talking fishing. The Upper Peninsula in the middle of the night, 6-footers. I mean, you ever watch The Deadliest Catch? That's like Joe's boat out there right now.
Oh yeah, no doubt. He's one of the diehards on Green Bay.
Definitely. All right, last question for Gary, guys.
All right, so talking about Mississippi River, what is your favorite way to fish wing dams?
All right, how do you fish wing dams? Now, guys, this is a loaded question. So if you're anywhere in the country and you don't know what this is, I mean, a lot of your major rivers are going to have wing dams, things that slow down the current. It's a mecca for holding walleyes. So, Gary, number one, let's explain what a wing dam is to these people, just because, again, we have viewers right now from Florida, from Mississippi, out here, Colorado, Wisconsin, or whatever. What's a wing dam, and what's your favorite way to fish that, which there's a million ways?
Yeah, a wing dam, you see mainly on the Mississippi. There's some other rivers that have them, but they're basically like a rock dam, kind of a big wall that's built from the shoreline out towards the center of the channel. And the reason that they're there is to provide the ability to slow current down. You get a big river like the Mississippi, especially when it floods in the spring, that current is devastating. It can rip up, the banks. It can make navigation difficult. It can just destroy everything with erosion. These wing dams are put into place, and a lot of the pools, the different sections of the river have lots of them, basically to act as a current break. It's kind of like having a wall that the water has to rush up against, and then it gets diverted into the middle. So it kind of helps to slow down the current overall. It helps the Corps of Engineers manage that current flow. The neat thing about them is they create a current break, and walleyes just absolutely love to hang around those wing dams and waylay food. My very favorite way to fish them is in the summer when the bite's on, is to cast, cast Berkeley bass baits like the dredgers and the diggers on the top and side of the wing dams. And these fish are so aggressive and in a lot of cases so big that they darn near rip the rod out of your hands. We've got a fantastic show coming up this year on the next bite that Chase and Corey Springle and Jason Shakira did together on the wing dams. And they use this technique. They cast crankbaits, and man, they just really hammer big fish. It's going to be one heck of a show.
When's that going to air?
I don't know exactly the week that it airs, but the show starts in January.
Okay.
We are on CBS Sports right now. Also, Discovery Channel's Destination America. Okay. We are on WFN. We stream on Waypoint TV. We also stream 1 week after it airs on Network TV. We stream on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So all you have to do is take a look. When the end of December comes here, we'll start making the announcements about the different shows and what the show titles are and stuff like that. And you'll be able to easily find that show.
Perfect. So again, make sure you watch that. For everybody wondering about wing dams, they're going to show you how to in the next bite. So just watch for all the seconds. Now, Devin's telling me we got to do one more question. They don't want to let you go. So one last question, I swear, and then we'll let you go.
All right. Chase Parsons.
Chase Parsons, you know him?
He says last mountain lake, GP. What's your last mountain lake you fished?
He says last mountain lake. Chase wants you to talk about last mountain lake.
Last mountain lake, well, he must be listening to this because that's the lake I talked about with the early
that's what
ice
he's
bite.
referencing. Okay.
That's the one where Tobias went up in the middle of summer. He fished it with Jeff Standick and did a show for the next bite there. All kinds of giant walleyes, but it is absolutely incredible early ice. Little secret, I think that's where Doug Stangy's got most of his big ice fishing walleyes when that you see with the Fisherman group.
He's a big fan of Last Mountain. There's no doubt. He's coming out here in about a month.
It's worthwhile. It's one heck of a lake to fish for big walleyes.
That's
Giants,
awesome.
I mean, early ice fish can get up to be 14, 15 pounds.
14, 15 pounds, guys. Last Mountain Lake, and you've seen a lot of record-setting line class records and everything else coming out of Last Mountain Lake. So that's a big one. And yeah, there's no doubt the Fisherman crew. They have about a standing cabin on the edge of that thing. They go there so much. So
yeah, I think so. Wow, who wouldn't, right?
Absolutely. I was talking to Jeff Simpson the other day. They're coming out here for some lake trout, and it was going back and forth. And he's like, "Man, last time I came to Colorado, it was 40 below and windy up there at 12,000 feet in elevation where you drug us." He said, "I'm going to Last Mountain. The conditions are a little nicer." So they're coming out here in February because they're at Last Mountain this coming week instead of coming out here to Colorado. So for everybody wondering that, so awesome.
When you invited me out there to do lake trout, I looked at the weather again, and I just thought, man, I got another pack.
One of these times we're going to get you out here for sure.
I might come for that.
Right. Everybody wants to come out for the elk. They don't want to come ice fishing, but everybody wants to shoot the elk.
Yeah.
Awesome, Gary. I can't thank you enough. Real quick, one more time. Tell everybody how they follow you, the Facebook channels, where they watch the show. Walk them through that one more time. Obviously, you're a wealth of knowledge, and the TV shows explain this firsthand of everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, you can come to the Next Bite TV. We're on CBS Sports. The new shows will start at the end of December, early January. We're also on Discovery Channel's Destination America. We're on WFN. We stream on Waypoint TV. We also stream on Amazon Prime. I forgot that one before.
Perfect.
We stream on our own YouTube channel. You can get our website. We've got. We're redoing our website right now. We're about ready to convert it over to a new mobile version. But our guys that are working on it said that between videos and articles, we have over 2,000 articles and videos on the Next Bite website right now. If you want to research something on walleyes, I guarantee you can learn about it there.
Excellent.
People, when they find that treasure trove of old articles and things like that, a lot of those articles are relevant today, even though they might have been written 8 years ago. And it's an unbelievable source for fishing, for finding out techniques and how to do different things. And then, the Facebook channel, the Next Bite TV Facebook channel, but Chase Parsons, Keith Kavaius, and I all have our own Facebook fan pages too.
Perfect.
So, there's a million ways to have access to us, and we really appreciate all the people that do watch too. Because if it wasn't for all the people out there, watching, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to fish for a living, and that would be sad.
That would be sad. Awesome, Gary. You coming to St. Paul Ice Show? Will I see you there? Will I be seeing you?
Yeah, no, I'll be there.
Perfect.
I'm coming in Friday morning. I get up about 3 in the morning and drive down.
Well, I land in Minneapolis at midnight, so we'll be right on the same schedule.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. We'll see you this weekend, Gary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Nate.
We appreciate it. All right, guys, that was literally legendary angler Gary Parsons. Hopefully you can hear that. I'm not going to lie. This is live. There's no editing. There's nothing crazy going on. Everything we're doing here is all live content. So, again, there's no editing. When I say it right now, I'm literally saying it as it is 100% live. Normally, we would not be using this TV to talk to our guests. Normally, it's going to be a split screen. We had a little bit of a malfunction right before the show went live. We've been going live for almost a year on the hunting side. We're just going live now on the fishing side, and we had a malfunction. I had a computer actually totally crash and burn up on us, so we may do with that. So I promise you, going forth, our interviews will be a little bit clearer. Your audio will be much better. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be going live literally every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. We're going to be having guests like Gary Parsons, his son Chase Parsons. We have Keith Kavaius. Guys, we have pros all over the gamut. I mean, we have professional bass anglers coming on here in the next couple months. Legendary ice anglers. You name it, we got it. And again, this show is about you. I don't think everybody quite realizes that. The show is about you, the anglers. So if you're watching this, you have concepts, techniques, things that you want us to talk about, comment below. Tell us what you want this show to be. We'll bring in those guests that excel at that point. We'll have them on here live, and we'll talk about them. We'll talk to them. You have the guest, you have the technique. You tell us what you want on this show, and I promise you, you will bring it on. Again, tonight's topic was the brand new show. Wanted to lay the format for you, and more importantly, we want to talk about that transition of going from fall conditions to winter conditions, whether that's on the ice or open water. But again, guys, I know tonight was kind of wide open. As we go forth, we're going to set forth and kind of to tell you what we're going to be talking about. Everything's going to be going out of the Tightline Outdoors page. So again, Tightline Outdoors, if you're watching this live, go to the Tightline Outdoor page. You can see our concepts, our targets, and everything that we'll be talking about in the future. Guys, and again, we could not do any of this without our great partners. Again, huge thanks to Bass Pro Shops for the entire platform. This whole live segment is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops. Huge thanks to Mr. Heater for going live from their pages. Guys, and a huge thanks to Tightline Outdoors. Again, I'm Nate Zelinsky. Guys, we'll be seeing you every week live, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Guys, again, we'll stay tuned next week, and then the week after that, we'll be seeing you every week. So make sure you put it on the calendar, share it with your friends, tell your friends. Again, make sure you bring everybody in as a community. Let's make everybody a better angler. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll stay tuned next week. I'm Nate Zelinsky.